What if the words you use weren't just describing your world, but creating it? What if by changing the words that you use, both when you speak with others and when you speak with yourself, you could change the results that you were getting in your life? We all have limiting beliefs. Most of the time they go unnoticed. And even when we do notice them, we don't know how to change them a lot of the time. We don't know how to overcome them and rewire our belief system. Well, language is one of the most powerful tools that we can use to do just that. And in this episode, I want to explain a little bit more about how that actually works, why it works, and how you can start using it in your life to start getting better results. The reason I want to talk about this and why I think it's so important is that there are so many people out there getting in their own way. There's so many challenges in life. There's so many things that make it difficult to achieve our goals, whether that be doing well financially or finding a great partner, feeling better about ourselves. There's so many things outside of ourselves that influence the results that we get and the way that we feel. But then we often are making things so much harder for ourselves by getting in our own way, by programming ourselves in a way that is unhelpful, by limiting ourselves in the language that we use when we describe what we're capable of. Right? Everybody's done it before. We do this all the time, is that, you get into a situation and perhaps somebody asks you to do something, right? And you say, I can't do that. Now, you might say, I can't do that for a number of reasons. Maybe you just don't want to, and you're just using, I can't do that as an excuse. Perhaps you're afraid to try. You use, instead of saying, oh no, I'm unsure about that, I don't know how, you say, I can't do that. But the problem with using words like I can't is that you are literally programming your subconscious to believe that you are incapable of taking that action. And so over time, by using that language, you're starting to believe that on a subconscious level. You're limiting yourself. You're limiting your own capabilities. The thing that I want to get across in this episode is that the language that we use to describe everything from what we're doing to how we feel, it matters. It really, really matters. And that we need to become as conscious and aware of the language that we use as possible if we are wanting to overcome self-limiting beliefs. If we want to be able to be more capable, be more confident, outgoing, whatever it is that you're wanting in life, you can start by being careful about the language that you use, because there's so many other things that are going to get in your way. Why be another obstacle in your own path? And you can start telling yourself thoughts and things that are going to empower you to tackle challenges, then it's going to get so much easier. That's the aim of this episode, is to help you to become aware of the language that you're using. And I've got a challenge for you at the end of the episode, so stay tuned for that. But help you to become more aware of the language you're using and start to shift from language that is limiting into language that is limitless. So I want to tell a little story that I think conveys the point of just how powerful language can be. And this is a story from back when I was in school, in maths class. Now, I used to be quite good at maths way back when, and good enough that my friends and other students in the class would come up to me and ask me for help in, completing their maths problems. And after a while, this being asked for help started to bother me, right? I didn't want to be helping other people at that time. Now, that sounds very selfish of me, and it was. But I didn't want to have that pressure of helping somebody else, complete their problem when I was working on my own, or I didn't want to be asked by the teacher to come up and, do an exercise on the blackboard. And so I started saying that I wasn't actually good in maths. And I distinctly remember this now looking back, making the shift from being good at maths to telling myself and telling others that I wasn't good at math. Like I couldn't do these problems and therefore I wasn't able to help them. And so they would effectively leave me alone. But that turned into a habitual pattern of belief for me. And because I'd been telling myself over and over again that I wasn't good at math and that I was incapable of doing these equations, I actually started to get worse and worse and worse in math, to the point where I actually wasn't good at math. And all of a sudden I was struggling to keep up with the rest of the class, and I ironically needed to ask others for help. But I distinctly remember the shift of being in a state of being able to do maths, telling myself that I no longer was good at maths, so other people would leave me alone. And it didn't take long. It was sort of 6 months to a year. And all of a sudden I was incapable of doing these equations. I really struggled to keep up. And I know that this was because I had trained my subconscious to believe that I was incapable of doing these problems. The thing to understand here is it's not that you change your ability from one day to the next. It's not that they say, I'm no good at maths anymore, and therefore, the ability to do maths disappears. That's not the point. What happens is that you are ingraining into your subconscious that you're not able to do a certain thing. And so your desire to approach those challenges dwindles. You don't tackle them with the belief that you can win. And so you stop tackling these challenges. And over time, because that behavior becomes a habit, your ability to do the problems is reduced because you aren't practicing, you aren't training, because you don't believe that you can win. And that happens all the time to us. We tell ourselves these stories, and these stories, they're so powerful. Even in ancient times, they understood the power of language. In the Christian Bible, for example, they state, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And you have to remember that God said, let there be light, and there was light. To understand this is to understand that they knew that through words, through the power of words, we created reality. Not to say that some big man in the sky created the world, but rather through the words that we use and the thoughts that become the words that we use, we create the reality that we experience. The same goes for the Greeks. In Greek, word is translated from logos, and logos means more than just the sounds that we utter. It means reason, divine order, the creative principle. It also embodies this idea that through the words that we utter, we create the reality that we experience. So even thousands of years ago, they understood the powerful principle of the spoken word. Take, for example, psychology. We understand that from psychology that we don't see the world as an objective reality. We see it based on an internal representation that we have of reality. And the words that we use shape that internal perception. Let's take, for example, when you say to yourself, you're feeling anxious, right? Instead of saying, oh, I feel a bit anxious, you say, I am anxious. Well, you're actually starting to craft your identity around anxiety. I am anxious. You're incorporating the anxiousness as part of who you are. Your subconscious is taking that on board and saying, right, we are anxious. I am anxious. And by doing so, you're reinforcing this feeling of anxiety rather than stating that there's something that you're feeling in that moment, but that's not who you are. And I think we do this across the board so many times. We say that we are a feeling, or I am angry, I am anxious, I'm afraid. And when we do that, again, we're incorporating that into our identity. But the problem with that, of course, is we usually use it when we're feeling anxious, afraid, angry, all of these things that tend to be destructive and unhelpful towards creating a life that we actually want to live. And so in order to craft a better identity, we need to be very careful about the language that we use, be very accurate with the language we use, and then also intentionally use empowering language that we can then take on into our identity. So let's take the feeling of anxiety, for example. If you're feeling anxious, rather than stating out loud or inside, right? Because most of the time this talk is self-talk, it's in our heads. Instead of saying, I'm anxious, or I'm anxious, I'm anxious, I'm anxious, because all that will do is exacerbate the situation, right? You'll start feeling more and more anxious. What you do instead is say, I am feeling anxious. And that has two effects. Firstly, it doesn't ingrain that anxiety into part of your identity. You don't become that thing. And secondly, by acknowledging the way that you feel, especially when it comes to anxiety and fear and anger, you shift the focus, you shift the processing from your amygdala, which is where your fight or flight reflex lives. So you shift it away from there and back into the prefrontal cortex, so back into the reasoning, logical part of your brain. And what that means is that you actually start to reduce the amount of anxiety that you're feeling. You start to be able to think clearly, think logically, think rationally. Now, what would be even better after that is if you've acknowledged that feeling, because it's not about denying how you feel, but it's being aware that the way that you talk to yourself is going to make the situation better or worse. So you can acknowledge how you feel, but then it's great to then shift into what are some positive affirmations. Now, positive affirmations get a lot of bad rap on the internet these days. I think people think it's a lot of fluff. Oh, I am confident, things like this. But actually, if you're telling yourself constantly, I'm confident, I am calm, I am peaceful, and you start to feel that in your body, well, that is what you're going to experience. And then that is the way that you will come across when you're interacting with others. So rather than focusing on the negative feelings that you're experiencing, acknowledge that is there, and now start to change your focus away from the problem and towards the solution. And that's going to program you into feeling calm, confident, and put together. It's not rocket science, but it does take a real awareness to be able to do this. Most of the time we're feeling something and we're not aware of the thoughts that are playing on repeat in the back of our minds. These limiting beliefs, these thoughts that are developing feelings that are unhelpful to us, like I'm afraid, I'm not capable, I'm not good enough, I'm not confident, I'm not, you have all of these thoughts often going in the back of your head on repeat 24/7. And in order to get some better results and different results in your life, you have to interrupt that. You have to interrupt that repetitive process and start putting into effect some better thoughts, to the point that they become the automatic thoughts that you think without your conscious awareness. But you have to first start that with conscious thought, right? Okay, I'm feeling anxious, right? I'm feeling anxious, but I'm starting to feel confident because I am capable of overcoming this. This is not a life-ending experience for me. I am capable of walking into my boss's office and asking for a raise, right? When you start to tell yourself those thoughts, you start to believe them. Now, when you believe them, you act on them. And when you act on them, you get the results that you're after. That's how it goes. Because thoughts create the feelings create the actions, and actions create the result. It's not nonsense, right? The words that we use are incredibly powerful. Now, this goes for, especially when you're interacting with your partner, being very, very careful about the language you use is going to shape the course of the conversation, as well as the course of the relationship over the long run. So if you're telling yourself, for example, if your partner does something that you don't like, and you say to yourself, oh, she always does that, right? Oh, he always does that. You're actually creating an identity of that person, of your partner. And it's an identity where they are always doing something that you don't like. And if you do that, that's what you're going to start seeing. We have, for example, the reticular activating system, which is a part in our brainstem that tells us what to pay attention to. And when you're constantly ingraining your subconscious with things like, oh, he always does this or she always does that, you're telling your brain and your subconscious and your reticular activating system that is something to pay attention to. And when you start to pay attention to it, obviously you're going to see it everywhere you look, right? It's just like when you buy a yellow car and then all of a sudden you see yellow cars everywhere, right? It's not that the yellow cars are there more often or less often after you bought the car. It's that you're paying attention to it. And if you don't want to, if you don't want to be with a partner where you're constantly seeing the things that you don't like, then you better not train yourself to pay attention to those things, right? A much better way is of course to perhaps you can acknowledge that, oh, they've done something here that I don't like, but that's not who they are. That's not what they do all of the time. This is just, they're having an off day. And then reaffirm the things that you do like about them and the things that they do that you would love to see more of. Because when you reaffirm and train yourself to spot the things that you do want to see, that becomes the reality that you experience. And all of a sudden, you've got a wonderful relationship where all of the time your partner is doing things that you love to see, right? Because you've trained yourself to notice them. The same goes for opportunities and obstacles when it comes to business and career. You can be problem focused or you can be solution focused. And the way that you train your mind using the words that you use is going to change what you perceive, right? Are you perceiving the problem, the obstacle, the thing that's stopping you from getting where you want? Or are you able to perceive the solution immediately, the opportunity? Something's come up, for example, and most people might see it as the thing that's going to stop them from moving forward. But if you've trained your mind to see opportunities, then you're seeing that as, oh my God, this is an amazing opportunity for me to get ahead because everybody else isn't going to get past this point because they're all seeing it as an obstacle. So we can train our mind to see opportunities, we can train our mind to see obstacles, and you get to choose which way you're going to train your mind. And the people that succeed in life, it's not about whether they're smarter or luckier. It's about what they've trained their brain and what they've trained their perception to notice, right? And we all have that power, and that power comes from the language that we use. So I've got a challenge for you. I want you for the next 24 hours to be really vigilant about the words that you use when you're talking to other people. Make sure that you're not using limiting language like, I can't do this. That's the biggest one. If you can get rid of that sentence, I can't, and replace it with I can, or I will, or I am. These are empowering sentences. Even then, you're going to completely shift the way that you approach life, and you're going to completely shift the results that you start to generate in life. So here's the challenge. Next 24 hours, pay attention. When you notice yourself saying, I can't, fix it, retract it, and say, no, that's not correct. I can. Perhaps it's something you don't want to do. Well, instead of saying, I can't do that, say, sorry, I don't want to do that right now. Or just say, I won't do that, right? That's different. That's not limiting your capability. Your partner asks you to do something. Instead of saying, I can't do that because you don't feel like it, just say, look, I don't feel like doing that right now. I won't do that right now. That's okay. It's okay to say you don't want to do something. It's okay to say you won't do something. But when you say you can't do something, that's where you start to limit your own capability. And we want to, especially here at the Positive Regression Podcast and what I do with the Positive Regression Network and the men that I coach there, it's all about becoming limitless. And a big part of that is the language that we use, because the language dictates what we see. It dictates the reality that we create. The other thing to pay attention this 24 hours is to focus on the words that you're saying to yourself in your own mind. Pay attention to the thoughts. See if you can notice some thought loops that are playing on repeat, and see if you can interrupt them. Because if you notice yourself, maybe you're feeling you're having a bad day, right? We're having a bad day. Well, reframe that. So instead of you're having a bad day, you can reframe that into, well, I'm not feeling great at the moment, but this day is going to turn around. I'm starting to feel more capable, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to make the most of this opportunity, this day that's presented itself to me. Or here's a really simple one that I see a lot of people doing. When it rains, instead of saying, oh, the weather's bad, right? Oh, it's bad weather outside, because you're attaching negative emotion to a situation. You're creating the way that you feel about this certain reality. Instead of saying it's bad weather, describe it as it is. It's wet weather, right? Because just by that small change, you're no longer ascribing as much negative emotion to the reality, the world that you see. And by reducing the amount of negative emotion that you attach, the more positive and the more constructive your life becomes. And then obviously the flip side of that is to then start attaching actually powerful, positive, constructive emotions to the world that you see, the thoughts that you're experiencing. Be accurate with the language you use, because it is shaping the way that you view the world, and it is shaping the results that you get. And so all I would encourage you is just for 24 hours, see if you can go 24 hours paying attention to those thoughts and start shifting into a more positive, more constructive. It's not about just positivity, right? This toxic positivity. It's not about that. It's about being constructive, like being aware of what are the results that you want to generate in life? What is the reality that you want to live in? And then picking the actions and the words and everything else that goes along with it that are going to get you to that result. You get to decide, but you've got to be aware of it. You've got to know that you can decide. It's within your power to change it. And then you go about changing it. And see, after 24 hours, just see how much of a better mood you're in. You know, when you make this part of your natural personality, when you tell yourself things like, I am capable, I am powerful, I am confident, you start to become that. You start to ingrain that into your personality. And who doesn't want that, right? So choose the words that are actually going to be beneficial, and start to change the world. Start to change your world, your life, by the language that you use. Another little tip I can give is every evening and every morning, before you go to bed and just after you wake up, because these are the best times to access your subconscious, just before you go to sleep, go over the words, say to yourself the things that you want to become, and you say it in the present tense. So let's say you want to be more confident, then you say, I am confident. And you try to imagine what that would feel like in your body, right? I am confident. You lie there with your eyes closed. Imagine what that would feel like and start to feel that feeling going through your body. I am loved, right? What does that feel like? The more that you can embody these words, the words generate the emotion and the feeling, and then the emotion and the feeling generate the action. So by saying those words to yourself and then feeling that emotion, that is who you become, and that is what you are going to then emanate outwards in the world when you go out and interact with other people. And that's what's going to generate the better results for you. So I am loved. I am confident. I am powerful. I'm capable. Whatever it is for you, do that every evening, every morning for a week, and see just how quickly and how drastically your world will improve. Your mood will improve. Your perspective on life will improve. You'll start to generate real results in your life. You know, people will start to come towards you. They'll gravitate towards you because all of a sudden you're this person who's just open and confident and calm and at peace with themselves. And people gravitate to people like that. So try it out. And once you experience the results, it becomes very difficult to go back to those limiting beliefs and those limiting thoughts, because you see just how much power you have over your own reality. And of course, if you're a guy who wants to be part of a supportive community, a community that are applying principles like these and many others to generate better results in their relationships, in their business, in their own minds, then consider signing up to the Positive Regression Network. The link to that is in the description below. Come on and be a part of a group of guys who are really wanting to create something great for themselves and the people around them, to become leaders in the world and in their own lives. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to try and apply all these principles and remember what to do. You can be part of a group that is supportive, where you'll get the resources, get the accountability to actually start to take ownership of your life and to start really putting into practice these principles that are going to generate the results that you want. Check that link out in the description below if you're interested, and I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Cheers, guys. Till then, peace.